This week's parsha is the concluding of the book of Bamidbar, the fourth of the 5 books of the Torah. And it has some very interesting discussions, specifically towards the end, when it deals with part of the question as to how we treat offenders who unfortunately kill, be it either by accident or on purpose. And it gives a good opportunity to discuss one of the 13 ikrim, one of the 13 fundamental principles of Jewish faith, and that is the concept and the belief in reward and punishment, that no good deed goes unrewarded, and no action that is inappropriate, unfortunately, goes unpunished. But sometimes we really ask, is this indeed true? We see the famous question, which is very real in our lives. We see people who are good, noble individuals who really have very difficult lives, to whom it appears that God has supplied them with every which challenge that is possible to actually be given. On the other hand, people who live immoral, decadent lives, people who are dishonest, and yet they seem to succeed and to prosper. And we ask ourselves, well, is this indeed true? Because part of our reality that has become part of our DNA, specifically in today's day and age, is we live in an instant society. We want to see an instantaneous reward for a mitzvah in order for it to be valuable to me. I want to be able to see clearly that if this morning, as indeed I put on tefillin, let me see the reward in the day that lies ahead. But it doesn't work that way. And conversely, one sees people, the worst of people, and people anywhere in between, from being average to absolute barbarians, and we don't see that there's any instantaneous repercussions. There doesn't seem to be any punishment that comes about. And it challenges not only this faith in this 13th, one of the 13 principles, but indeed it challenges our whole perspective on the world. Why should I? I understand I should be moral, but certainly when it comes to mitzvot, why should I? I don't necessarily see that the righteous receive rewards, that the righteous live good lives. When we say in benching, Na'ar hayiti v'gam zakanti, I was a lad and I have also aged, v'lo ra'iti tzaddik ne'ezav, and I have never seen a forsaken righteous individual, v'zar'o mevakesh lachem, and his descendants, his children, are asking for bread. And we ask ourselves, is that true? Are there indeed not righteous, pious individuals who unfortunately struggle to put food on the table? Unfortunately, probably, certainly in places like Israel, there are a dime a dozen. And whilst we're living in a much more affluent era than perhaps 60, 100 years ago, it still exists, and it existed even more so then. So how could King David, how could we say this? Nara Hayiti, I was a lad and I didn't see anybody destitute. And these kind of issues present a very compelling question and a challenge at times to our faith in the goodness of God, in the goodness of the world, in the concept of reward and punishment. But perhaps our understanding is restricted by virtue of the fact that we do live in a time where we want everything to be instantaneous. As I mentioned in my shir the other day, you speak to a coffee lover and they will tell you that instant coffee is a blight on modern day society. Coffee needs to be percolated. It takes time. To really appreciate it, you need that time. And yet we aren't willing to do that. We're not willing to wait. We wanted everything to occur immediately right now. And therefore we're confronted with this question, the question of reward and punishment. I saw a beautiful quote that says that grandchildren are a reward for not killing one's children. It's a flippant statement, but I'm sure many of us out there have had those moments when our children have just pulled every which string in every which direction at the worst of times, where we're absolutely flabbergasted. We don't know what to do. We're exasperated. And we trudge along. And we get through those difficult moments and those difficult days. And as time progresses, we hopefully get nachas from our children, and indeed, hopefully, live to merit to see grandchildren, please God, great-grandchildren. And I have no doubt that this is very much the greatest nachas that a grandparent has, is to look not only at his children, but to look at her grandchildren as well. And perhaps with grandchildren one sees it even more and one appreciates it even more. But the reward for all those sleepless nights that the mother has, and perhaps the father, of getting up to feed, the reward of all those times that one had to change the child's nappy 4, 5, 6 times a day or more, the reward of having to launder a child's clothes, 3 sets of clothing a day, and that's even just teenagers. And I'm sure, and I know we all feel at those moments in time absolutely exasperated. And yet the rewards come. And the rewards come with time. And in fact, as the time progresses and one is blessed with those grandchildren, the reward and the appreciation of all that toil and trouble that we had, all the invested hours and energy with our children in doing the homework, in doing the mundane and the trivial, all of a sudden the reward might take 30, 40, 50 years, but certainly we appreciate it. And this idea is very much reflected in this week's parasha, because in this week's parasha it relates the punishments for the terrible act of taking another person's life. At times it is done wanton murder. One sees somebody that one has enmity towards, it's calculated, it's premeditated, and the person goes and kills this individual, and the punishment for that, according to the Torah, is that if there are witnesses and it fits all the criteria, then it's a capital offense and the person has to be executed. On the other hand, there are times where, unfortunately, even the most decent of individuals are unfortunately the mechanism and the conduit for a most terrible act, where death occurs, an accident, where unfortunately the cost of that accident is taking another person's life. The person has to live with that forever. But we certainly can't give a capital offense for something that was out of their control. And therefore the Torah says that the punishment for that is that they have to go to a city of refuge. That they have to stay in that city, one of the cities given to the Levites, to the Levium, to wait there until the demise of the Kohen Gadol, and only at that point in time are they allowed to return to their home. And should they choose not to go to a city of refuge, or alternatively, should they actually leave during the lifetime of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest, then the relative of the deceased has absolute right to take his life. And even though it was only an accident, nonetheless, the fact that he caused death means that there's a punishment that's going to be involved by the family. We understand the emotions. We understand the pain that the family experiences. And we demand from the person that he protect himself by going to a city of refuge. The Talmud asks, what would be a case where a person kills premeditatingly, but there are no witnesses? And on the other hand, you have a person who kills by accident, and there too there are no witnesses. The person who killed on purpose cannot be executed because there's no witnesses. By the same token, the person who killed by accident cannot be sent to a city of refuge, for there too there are no witnesses to testify to what transpired. So our rabbis tell us, fear not. Even though we, as the Beth Din, cannot be the mechanism to bring about a judgment, God can always bring about a judgment. Reward and punishment is eternally in God's hands. And the Talmud therefore relates that the scenario would look something like this. The person who killed by accident is climbing a ladder, and underneath all of a sudden walks this person who killed on purpose, in the presence of many people. The person on the ladder loses his footing, he falls off the ladder, plummets down, falls directly onto the murderer underneath, and unfortunately kills him in the presence of all these people. The murderer has lost his life. The person who killed by accident has unfortunately done so again, but in the presence of so many people that now he is compelled to go to a city of refuge. And what our rabbis really are telling us is that reward and punishment is a fundamental tenet of Judaism. But it's important for us to appreciate and to realize that they're not necessarily instantaneous. And this is a very valuable message for all of us, because we all need to commit to more mitzvot, whether it's putting on tefillin in the morning for 5 minutes, giving a few rands to tzedakah every day, learning a few moments every single day, lighting Shabbos candles, giving tzedakah before Shabbos candles, and the list is virtually infinite. And sometimes we can turn around and say, but what's the use? I keep kosher, I have mezuzot, I put on tefillin, and I struggle. I struggle to put food on the table, perhaps. I struggle because I've been impacted, unfortunately, by crime, by ill health. So all this goodness that I do in fulfilling God's will, it hasn't brought anything. I've received nothing in return. This parasha teaches us that unfortunately, whilst that may be true in the short term, there's no question in the long term. And long term needn't necessarily mean this lifetime. It could mean the lifetime of the soul, which is eternal and immortal. Our rabbis tell us God does not withhold the reward of any creature, let alone any human being, let alone any Jew when he performs a mitzvah. So let us remember that the rewards of being a parent sometimes takes many years and perhaps decades to be truly realized. But nonetheless, it makes the entire journey absolutely worthwhile. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu ensure, however, that everyone be rewarded for their goodness immediately in abundance, and every Jew should have good health and everything that they require materially. I wish you all a fantastic Shabbos.